The morning sun rose over Whispering Valley Ranch, casting a golden light on the sprawling fields where Harlan McKinney's prized Highland cattle grazed peacefully. At 63, Harlan had built a life far removed from his days as an army tracker. His ranch was his sanctuary, and Buttercup, his first Highland cow, was its heart. Harlan's daughter, Emma, joined him at the fence line, carrying her veterinary kit. "Buttercup looks good," she said, brushing hay off her shirt. "She's the queen of this place," Harlan replied, his voice filled with pride. Their quiet morning was interrupted by a distant rumble. The sound of engines drew closer, echoing across the valley. Harlan frowned, recognizing the distinct roar of motorcycles. "Those bikes don't belong here." By the time Harlan reached the southern fence line, 6 bikers had arrived, their patch-covered jackets marking them as members of the Rust Vultures, a gang known for stirring trouble. Their leader, Vince "Snake" Holloway, was a tall, tattooed man with a cruel grin that never reached his eyes. "Nice place you've got here," Snake called out mockingly, leaning on the fence. Harlan kept his distance, his voice calm but firm. "This is private property. You and your boys need to leave." Snake's grin widened. "We're just admiring the view. Relax, old man." The gang climbed over the fence despite Harlan's warning. Buttercup, curious but cautious, ambled toward the intruders. Snake pulled out his phone, filming as his crew surrounded the cow. "Look at this thing," Snake said, laughing. "What kind of freak cow is this?" Buttercup stepped back, her instincts sensing danger. One of the bikers, a wiry man named Jasper, pulled out a cattle prod. "Let's see what she's made of." "No," Harlan barked, moving forward. "Leave her alone." But it was too late. Jasper jabbed the prod into Buttercup's side, sending a jolt through her body. She bellowed in pain and confusion as the bikers laughed, their phones recording every moment. From the safety of the barn, Emma recorded the scene with her own phone, her hands trembling with anger. Buttercup staggered, her gentle eyes wide with fear. Harlan stood frozen, his military instincts taking over. He memorized every face, every patch, and every detail about their bikes. Snake jabbed Buttercup again before signaling his crew to leave. "Thanks for the entertainment, old man. We might come back for more." Harlan watched as the gang roared away, their laughter echoing in the distance. He knelt beside Buttercup, soothing her trembling body. Emma hurried over, her face pale. "Sheriff Grayson is on his way," she said, her voice tight. "Good," Harlan replied. "We'll need him to document this." Sheriff Alan Grayson arrived 20 minutes later, his patrol car kicking up dust as it rolled to a stop. He was a middle-aged man with a weathered face and a demeanor that spoke of too many years handling small-town disputes. "Got here as quick as I could," Grayson said, stepping out and surveying the scene. His expression hardened as he saw Buttercup's condition. "Rust Vultures again?" Harlan nodded. "They filmed everything, probably posting it online as we speak." Emma handed the sheriff her tablet. "I documented the injuries. Electrical burns, bruising. Buttercup's in shock, but she'll recover." Grayson sighed, flipping through the photos. "They've been causing trouble all over the county, harassing ranchers, vandalizing property. But this is different. Animal cruelty is a felony." "They'll post it," Harlan said. "That's their game. They want the attention." Grayson studied Harlan carefully. He'd heard stories about the man's past, about missions on foreign soil tracking targets most people would never want to meet. "What are you planning to do?" Harlan's gaze shifted to the horizon, where the bikers had disappeared. His voice was calm but carried an edge Grayson recognized as dangerous. "I'm going to make sure they never come back." Later that evening, Emma treated Buttercup while Harlan sat at the kitchen table, spreading out a map of the region. His mind worked methodically, analyzing patterns from the gang's previous activities. "They're testing us," he said aloud. Emma looked up. "Testing what?" "Boundaries. Reactions. They didn't just stumble onto this ranch." He tapped the map. "They've been moving through this area for months, learning the roads, the properties. This wasn't random." Emma frowned, setting down her medical supplies. "You think there's more to this?" "I know there is," Harlan replied, "and I'm going to find out what it is." As the sun set over Whispering Valley Ranch, Harlan stood on the porch, his silhouette framed against the fading light. The tranquility of his land had been shattered, but his resolve had been sharpened. The rust vultures thought they had found an easy target, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. Harlan McKinney was about to remind them, and anyone connected to them, that justice in the valley wasn't just a word. It was a promise. Harlan McKinney hadn't slept. As dawn broke over Whispering Valley Ranch, he stood at the edge of his property, staring out over the open fields. Buttercup grazed quietly, her movements slower than usual, the marks of the previous day's cruelty still visible on her coat. The cow's resilience was a source of comfort, but it wasn't enough to quiet the storm in Harlan's mind. Emma approached, carrying a mug of steaming coffee. "You've been out here all night," she said, handing it to him. Harlan nodded, his eyes never leaving the horizon. "Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about those bikers. They didn't come here by chance." Emma frowned, leaning on the fence. "What do you mean?" "They knew the layout of the property," Harlan said. "Came right up to the cattle fence. Didn't bother scouting or hesitating. That wasn't a random act of vandalism. They were testing something." Emma hesitated. What could they be testing? Harlan took a sip of his coffee. "Our reaction. Seeing how far they could push before someone pushed back." His words hung heavy in the air. Emma glanced at Buttercup, then back at her father. "If you're right, what's the next move?" "We start gathering information," Harlan said. "Every detail about them, their movements, their connections. These guys aren't just bikers causing trouble. They're part of something bigger." By mid-morning, Harlan was in town, meeting with Sheriff Alan Grayson in his modest office. The sheriff's desk was cluttered with paperwork, but the man himself looked as composed as ever. "Got something for you," Grayson said, sliding a folder across the desk. "Reports from the last 6 months. Complaints about the rust vultures. Most of it's vandalism, broken fences, graffiti, but there's a pattern if you look closely." Harlan opened the folder, flipping through the pages. Each report was minor on its own, but together they painted a picture of deliberate escalation. The bikers had been targeting ranches, supply depots, and rural roads, always just skirting the edge of serious crimes. "They're not just being reckless," Harlan said, studying the pattern. "They're mapping the area, learning the terrain." Grayson nodded. "That's what I've been thinking too. Problem is, we don't have enough to pin anything major on them. Animal cruelty might change that, but they're careful about keeping their tracks clean." Harlan closed the folder and looked at the sheriff. "Then we don't go after the small stuff. We find out who's pulling their strings." That evening, back at the ranch, Emma was tending to Buttercup when she noticed something unusual on the cow's flank. A faint scar, almost imperceptible, ran along her side. At first, she thought it was from the cattle prod, but upon closer inspection, she realized it was older, something surgical. "Dad," she called, her voice urgent. Harlan appeared moments later. "What is it?" Emma pointed to the scar. "This isn't from yesterday. It's older. Someone made an incision here." Harlan's eyes narrowed. Why would anyone do that? Emma grabbed her veterinary scanner and ran it over Buttercup's side. A faint beeping sound made her stop. "There's something inside her," she said, her voice trembling. "What kind of something?" Harlan asked, his tone sharp. Emma adjusted the scanner. "Metallic. Could be a tracking device." Harlan clenched his fists, his mind racing. "Get it out. Now." Hours later, they had removed a small, weathered device from Buttercup's flank. It was a simple tracker, the kind used in livestock management, but it was unlike anything Emma had ever seen. "This isn't standard equipment," she said, examining it under a magnifying lamp. "It's military grade. Someone tagged her on purpose." Harlan stared at the device, his jaw tightening. This wasn't about Buttercup. They used her to track the ranch. But why? Emma asked. Harlan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood and walked to the window, staring out at the fields. "Because this place is part of something bigger than we realized." The next morning, a dusty truck pulled into the ranch. Harlan recognized the driver immediately, Lucas Grady, a former member of the Rust Vultures. Lucas had left the gang years ago and was now trying to turn his life around. "Grady," Harlan said, stepping onto the porch, "what brings you here?" Lucas climbed out of the truck, his face grim. Heard about what happened. Thought you might need some help. Why would you want to help? Harlan asked, his tone cautious. Because I know those guys, Lucas said. And I know they're working for someone bigger. The Rust Vultures don't do anything unless they're getting paid. Harlan studied Lucas for a moment, then nodded. Come inside. We've got a lot to talk about. Over coffee at the kitchen table, Lucas revealed what he knew. The Rust Vultures had been acting as muscle for a larger network, a shadowy organization funding construction projects in rural areas. These projects, Lucas explained, weren't what they seemed. They're using the projects to hide something, Lucas said. Weapons, drugs, you name it. They pick places like this because they think nobody's paying attention. Harlan frowned. Who's running the operation? Lucas hesitated. I don't know her name, but there's a woman at the top. Rich, connected. She's the one calling the shots. Emma leaned forward. If we can figure out who she is, we can stop this. Lucas shook his head. It's not that simple. These people are professionals. They've got layers of protection. You go after them, and they'll come after you. Harlan's expression hardened. Let them try. Later that night, Harlan, Emma, and Lucas gathered in the barn, poring over maps and documents. Lucas marked key locations where the Rust Vultures had been active, each one corresponding to a construction project funded by shell companies. This is bigger than we thought, Emma said, her voice shaking. It always is, Harlan replied. Lucas pointed to a location near the neighboring county. This one's a quarantine station. They've been moving a lot of equipment through there. Could be their main hub. Harlan nodded. Then that's where we start. As the three of them worked late into the night, a quiet determination settled over the ranch. The Rust Vultures had brought trouble to Whispering Valley, but they had underestimated the people who lived there. This wasn't just about justice for Buttercup anymore. It was about exposing a conspiracy that stretched far beyond their small town. A conspiracy that would soon learn just how far Harlan McKinney was willing to go to protect his land and his people. The Rust Vultures were in disarray, though they didn't yet realize it. Vince "Snake" Holloway leaned back in a tattered recliner inside the gang's hideout, a decrepit warehouse just outside of Silver Ridge. The gang was celebrating a successful delivery, but there was tension beneath their laughter. Snake had noticed subtle fractures in his crew, whispers, sideways glances, and doubts creeping into the ranks. Hey, Snake, Jasper said, walking in with his phone. That video of the cow? It's blowing up. Hundreds of comments. Snake smirked. Good. Let the world see what we do. But as he scrolled through the comments, his smirk faded. What's wrong? Jasper asked. Snake tossed the phone onto the table, where it spun to a stop. Half the comments ain't laughing. They're mad. Calling us cowards. Jasper shrugged. So? Let them talk. Snake didn't reply. He glanced around the room, where a few of his men were glued to their phones, likely seeing the same backlash. For the first time, Snake felt a nagging uncertainty. Meanwhile, Harlan, Emma, and Lucas were preparing their next move at the ranch. Lucas had spent the previous night detailing everything he knew about the Rust Vultures' operations. His intel pointed to the gang acting as pawns for a shadowy benefactor funding various criminal enterprises. They're moving shipments through the Red Creek warehouse, Lucas explained, tapping a map on the barn wall. Drugs, weapons, whatever the buyer wants. But the gang doesn't know much beyond that. They're just runners. Emma frowned. So how do we get to the people above them? Lucas hesitated. We take them apart piece by piece. If the vultures fall, the people pulling the strings will start scrambling. That's when we make our move. Then we start at Red Creek, Harlan said, his voice firm. The following night, Harlan and Lucas parked just beyond the Red Creek warehouse. From their vantage point, they could see the Rust Vultures unloading crates from the back of a truck. The gang's movements were sloppy, with little regard for stealth, a stark contrast to the precise logistics Lucas had described. Something's off, Lucas muttered. Harlan nodded. They're being too casual. They're hiding something. As they watched, a sleek black SUV pulled into the lot, its tinted windows reflecting the moonlight. A tall woman stepped out, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Who's that? Harlan asked. Lucas squinted. That's her. The one running the show, the woman, Eva Cartwright, exuded confidence as she approached Snake and his crew. Even from a distance, Harlan could tell she commanded respect and fear. Snake stiffened as she spoke, her gestures sharp and deliberate. "She doesn't look happy," Lucas said. "She shouldn't be," Harlan replied. "They're amateurs. She's a professional." Inside the warehouse, Eva's sharp voice cut through the air. "I gave you simple instructions," she snapped, her cold gaze locking on Snake. "Move the shipments. Keep a low profile. Instead, you draw attention to yourselves with that ridiculous stunt." Snake tried to defend himself. "It was just for fun. A little." Eva raised a hand, silencing him. "Fun doesn't pay the bills, Snake. And it doesn't keep federal agents off my back. Your antics have jeopardized everything we've built." Snake clenched his fists but said nothing. Eva turned to Jasper, who was nervously avoiding eye contact. "If any of you step out of line again," she said, her voice dangerously low, "you'll find out just how replaceable you are." With that, she strode back to her SUV and drove off, leaving a tense silence in her wake. Unaware they were being watched, the gang resumed their work, though the mood had shifted. Lucas snapped photos of the license plates on the trucks and the SUV before motioning for Harlan to follow him. "We've got what we need," Lucas whispered. "Let's get out of here." Harlan hesitated, his instincts telling him to stay. Something about the way Eva had spoken to Snake suggested cracks in the gang's loyalty. "They're turning on each other," Harlan said as they slipped back into the woods. "That's how we take them down." The next morning, Harlan and Lucas reviewed their findings with Emma. The photos Lucas had taken included serial numbers on the crates, which Emma traced to stolen goods from a storage facility in the neighboring county. "This is the proof Sheriff Grayson needs," Emma said, her voice tinged with hope. "It's a start," Harlan replied, "but we need more." By evening, Snake's paranoia had reached a boiling point. He gathered his crew at the hideout, slamming his fists on the table. "Something's going on," he growled. "That woman's setting us up to take the fall. I can feel it." Jasper, emboldened by Eva's earlier reprimand, spoke up. "Maybe it's because you're sloppy, Snake. Maybe she's right." The room went silent. Snake glared at Jasper, but the younger man didn't back down. "You think you can do better?" Snake snarled. "I think we're all tired of cleaning up your messes," Jasper shot back. Before Snake could respond, one of the gang members burst into the room. "Snake, we've got a problem. Cops are sniffing around the Red Creek warehouse." Snake's blood ran cold. "What?" "Someone tipped them off," the man said. "They're looking into the shipments." Snake turned his glare to Jasper. "Was it you?" "No," Jasper said, but the defensive tone in his voice planted doubt in everyone's minds. Snake grabbed Jasper by the collar. "You better pray it wasn't. Because if I find out you crossed me, you're done." As chaos erupted among the Rust Vultures, Harlan and Lucas were already moving to their next target. They had planted enough seeds of doubt to fracture the gang, and now it was time to escalate. Harlan knew this was just the beginning. The Rust Vultures were cracking under the pressure, but Eva Cartwright and her network were still a step ahead. "The gang's going to collapse," Lucas said as they drove through the quiet night. "But Eva won't go down with them." "She doesn't have to," Harlan replied. "We'll take her operation apart, piece by piece." The first piece had fallen, but the battle for justice in Whispering Valley was far from over. The Rust Vultures were unraveling faster than anyone had anticipated. News of Sheriff Grayson's quiet investigation into the Red Creek warehouse had reached Eva Cartwright within hours. Sitting in her office, a minimalist space in a glass-walled high-rise in Dallas, she exuded calm control as her top lieutenant, Anthony Knox Harper, delivered the bad news. "The warehouse is compromised," Knox said, his voice steady but his eyes wary. "Local law enforcement hasn't made any arrests, but they're sniffing around." Eva leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled. "And what about the vultures?" Knox hesitated. "They're fracturing. Snake's losing control of his men." Eva's lips curled into a cold smile. "Good. Let them implode. We can't have amateurs dragging us down." "But if they talk," Knox began, but Eva cut him off with a sharp wave of her hand. "They won't. If Snake loses his grip, His own men will take care of him. And if they don't, she picked up her phone and typed a quick message. I'll handle it. Back at Whispering Valley Ranch, Harlan McKinney was preparing for the next phase of his plan. The photos and intel gathered from the Red Creek warehouse had given Sheriff Grayson enough evidence to raid the site. However, Harlan knew that the rust vultures were just pawns in a much larger game. They're crumbling, Lucas said as he joined Harlan and Emma in the barn. The warehouse raid spooked them. Snake's crew is already turning on each other. Good, Harlan replied. We keep the pressure on. They're not the endgame. Cartwright is. Emma spread out a map on the workbench. The Red Creek warehouse was a mid-level hub. If Eva's running this operation like Lucas says, there has to be a central point, a main distribution site. Lucas nodded. She's smart. She wouldn't keep the real operation anywhere obvious. Harlan studied the map, his finger tracing the routes the rust vultures had been using. No, but she's using legitimate cover. Construction projects, quarantine stations, even livestock transport. He tapped a spot near the border of the neighboring county. Here, the Harlow Agricultural Complex. It's listed as a grain storage facility, but it's isolated, secure, and has rail access. Emma frowned. You think that's it? It fits, Harlan said. We need to confirm. That night, Harlan and Lucas drove out to the Harlow Agricultural Complex. The site was vast, with silos, storage sheds, and a loading dock. Security lights illuminated the perimeter, and a high chain-link fence surrounded the property. Lucas peered through a pair of binoculars. That's not grain storage security. Those guards are professionals, tactical gear, military stances. Harlan nodded. Eva's upping her game. They observed the complex for hours, documenting the movement of trucks and the guards' patrol patterns. One truck caught their attention, a nondescript 18-wheeler with no company logo. As it pulled up to the loading dock, the guards snapped to attention, their behavior notably more alert. That's the one, Harlan muttered. Let's get closer, Lucas suggested. Harlan shook his head. Not yet. We don't have enough. We need a way in. The next morning, Emma returned to the ranch with unexpected news. I've been going through vet records in the area, she said, setting her laptop on the kitchen table. Some of the livestock transports connected to these routes don't make sense. Cattle disappearing from one station and reappearing at another with no record of how they got there. Harlan leaned over her shoulder. A smuggling front? Probably, Emma replied. But here's the kicker. One of the vets who signed off on these inspections was fired 2 months ago for falsifying documents. Lucas raised an eyebrow. What happened to them? Emma hesitated. They disappeared. No one's seen or heard from them since. Later that day, Harlan drove to Silver Ridge to meet with Sheriff Grayson. The sheriff had been piecing together the connections between Eva Cartwright's network and the rust vultures. This is bigger than I thought, Grayson admitted, spreading out a series of photos and documents. Eva's not just moving drugs and weapons. She's trafficking everything. Livestock, illegal goods, even people. Harlan's jaw tightened. Then why hasn't anyone stopped her? Grayson sighed. Because she knows how to cover her tracks. Everything looks legitimate on paper. And she's got political connections keeping her protected. Harlan glanced at the photos. We need more than paper trails. We need something that ties her directly to the operation. That night, the rust vultures reached their breaking point. Snake Holloway had called a meeting at their hideout, hoping to regain control of his crew. You think I don't know what you're doing? Snake snarled, pacing in front of his men. Someone's been talking to the cops, and I'm going to find out who. Jasper crossed his arms. Maybe the problem isn't us, Snake. Maybe it's you. Snake lunged at him, but before he could land a punch, another gang member stepped in. This isn't helping, the man said. We've got bigger problems. The cops are all over Red Creek, and Eva's going to come after us if we don't clean this up. Snake sneered. Let her come. I'll handle her. But his bravado was short-lived. The sound of motorcycles echoed outside, and seconds later, the hideout door burst open. A group of heavily armed men in black stormed in, their weapons trained on the gang. Eva sends her regards, one of them said coldly. The rust vultures scattered, but it was clear Eva had decided to cut her losses. Snake barely escaped with his life, But the rest of his crew wasn't so lucky. Back at the ranch, Harlan received a late-night call from Lucas. "Snake's done," Lucas said. "Eva's cleaning house. She sent a hit squad to take out the vultures." Harlan frowned. "And Snake? He's alive, but he won't last long." Harlan considered this. Snake might be reckless and dangerous, but he had one thing that could make him valuable: knowledge of Eva's operation. "Where is he?" Harlan asked. Lucas hesitated. "Hiding out in an old hunting cabin near Pine Hollow." Harlan grabbed his keys. "We're going to find him before Eva's people do." As they drove toward Pine Hollow, Harlan and Lucas knew the risks. Eva's reach was long, and her ruthlessness was unparalleled. But if they could get to Snake, they might gain the edge they needed to dismantle her operation for good. The shadows of Whispering Valley grew darker as they approached the cabin. Harlan's mind raced with possibilities, knowing the road ahead was fraught with danger. "We're close," Lucas said, his voice low. Harlan gripped the wheel, his resolve unwavering. "Then let's finish this." The cabin near Pine Hollow was a relic of a bygone era, its sagging roof and peeling paint blending seamlessly with the dense forest that surrounded it. Harlan parked his truck a few hundred yards away, cutting the engine to minimize noise. "This guy's cornered," Lucas whispered as they approached on foot. "He's either going to fight or run." "Let's hope it's the second one," Harlan replied, gripping the flashlight in his hand. "But if it's the first, we need him alive." Lucas nodded, his hand resting on the pistol holstered at his side. The cabin's windows were dark, but faint wisps of smoke curled from the chimney. Snake Holloway was inside. Harlan motioned for Lucas to circle around while he approached the front door. Knocking firmly, Harlan called out, "Snake, we need to talk." For a moment, there was no response. Then a hoarse voice from inside yelled, "Go to hell." Harlan sighed. "We're not here to fight. We know Eva's after you. You're running out of places to hide." The sound of shuffling footsteps reached his ears, and a shotgun barrel appeared in the window. "Last warning," Snake growled. "Get off my property." Harlan stepped back, hands raised. "If we wanted you dead, we wouldn't have knocked. But if you don't come with us, you won't live long enough to regret it." Inside the cabin, Snake's paranoia was running wild. He hadn't slept in days, and every noise in the woods made his heart race. He didn't trust Harlan, but he trusted Eva's enforcers even less. He opened the door just enough to see Harlan's face. "Why should I believe you're not with her?" Harlan kept his voice calm. "If we were, you'd already be dead. We're your only chance to survive this. But if you want to die here, be my guest." Snake hesitated. Finally, he lowered the shotgun and opened the door. "You've got 5 minutes. Talk." Inside, the cabin reeked of smoke and sweat. Snake paced nervously, the shotgun still in his hands. "We know Eva sent people after you," Harlan began. "She's cleaning house, and you're at the top of her list." Snake laughed bitterly. "You think I don't know that? She sent a damn death squad to wipe us out." "Because you're a liability," Lucas said, stepping into the room. "But you're not useless. You know her operation better than anyone else. Help us, and we'll keep you alive." Snake glared at him. "And what's in it for you?" "Justice," Harlan said simply. Snake scoffed. "You think you're some kind of cowboy hero? This isn't a movie, old man. Eva doesn't lose." "She will," Harlan said, his voice hardening. "And you're going to help us make it happen. Or you can take your chances on your own. Your call." Snake hesitated, his survival instincts warring with his pride. Finally, he sighed. "Fine, but if I end up dead, I'm taking you both with me." Back at Whispering Valley Ranch, Emma was waiting anxiously. When she saw Harlan's truck pull into the driveway, she ran out to meet them. "Did you find him?" she asked. Harlan climbed out of the truck, gesturing to Snake, who was slouched in the passenger seat. "Yeah, we found him. Or what's left of him." Snake scowled but said nothing. Over the next few hours, Snake reluctantly shared what he knew about Eva's operation. He confirmed that the Harlow Agricultural Complex was a major hub, but there was more. "She's got 3 distribution points," Snake explained, pointing to a map. "Harlow's the biggest, but there's another one near the state line and a third at an old airstrip." Lucas frowned. We didn't see anything about an airstrip. Because it's not active anymore, Snake said. It's disguised as a salvage yard. That's where she moves the big shipments. Emma leaned over the map. And the state line facility? Same deal, Snake replied. Looks like a shipping warehouse, but it's all a front. She's been using it to move weapons and other stuff across state lines for months. Harlan studied the map. If we take out those hubs, her network collapses. Snake laughed. Good luck. You think you're the first people to go after her? She's got connections everywhere. Judges, cops, politicians, you name it. Then we'll have to be smarter, Harlan said. The next morning, Harlan met with Sheriff Grayson to relay Snake's intel. This is big, Grayson said, running a hand through his hair. But without hard evidence, we can't just go in guns blazing. We don't need to, Harlan replied. If we can document the shipments moving through these sites, we'll have enough to get federal attention. Grayson nodded. I'll reach out to some contacts at the DEA, but we'll need airtight evidence. Leave that to us, Harlan said. Over the next few days, Harlan, Lucas, and Emma worked with Snake to plan their next move. Snake was skittish, constantly looking over his shoulder, but his knowledge of Eva's operation proved invaluable. I still don't trust him, Lucas muttered one night as they reviewed their plans. You don't have to, Harlan replied. But he's scared. That makes him useful for now. Their first target was the airstrip. Under the cover of darkness, Harlan and Lucas positioned themselves near the salvage yard, their cameras ready. Snake had warned them about the tight security, and he wasn't wrong. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, and floodlights illuminated the yard. After hours of watching, they spotted a convoy of trucks pulling in. The guards opened the gates, and the trucks disappeared into one of the hangars. Got it, Lucas whispered, snapping photos. As they prepared to leave, they heard the distant rumble of motorcycles. Trouble? Lucas asked. Harlan's eyes narrowed. Let's find out. From their hiding spot, they watched as a group of bikers rode into the yard. At the head of the group was Knox Harper, Eva's right-hand man. He dismounted his bike and began barking orders at the guards. Looks like Eva's sending reinforcements, Lucas said. Or cleaning up loose ends, Harlan replied. Knox was carrying a metal briefcase, which he handed to one of the guards before disappearing into the hangar. What do you think's in there? Lucas asked. Something worth finding out, Harlan said. By the time they returned to the ranch, dawn was breaking. Snake was pacing in the barn, visibly agitated. You saw Knox, didn't you? He asked as they walked in. Harlan nodded. Yeah. Why? Snake swallowed hard. Because if Knox is there, it means Eva's getting ready to move something big. And if she's tying up loose ends, we're all on borrowed time. Harlan exchanged a look with Lucas. They were closer to the truth than ever, but the stakes were higher than they'd realized. Then we don't have much time, Harlan said. We take down the airstrip, and we take it down fast. As the morning sun climbed higher, the team knew the clock was ticking. Eva's network was vast, her resources extensive, but Harlan was determined to see justice prevail. Whispering Valley had already endured too much. It was time to fight back. The plan was simple, but the execution would be anything but. Harlan, Lucas, Emma, and Snake spent the next 2 days gathering everything they needed for the operation. With Sheriff Grayson's help, they secured a discreet supply of surveillance equipment, and Lucas tapped into his old contacts to arrange access to additional resources, including a vehicle disguised as a utility van. The airstrip, nestled behind the facade of a salvage yard, was heavily fortified. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, while strategically placed cameras and floodlights covered every angle. It was clear Eva Cartwright spared no expense protecting her operation. We've got one shot at this, Harlan said as he spread a detailed blueprint of the airstrip across the ranch's dining table. We need to get inside, plant surveillance equipment, and gather proof of what's being moved through there. No mistakes. Snake leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. I'm telling you, if they catch us, they won't hesitate to kill us. Knox Harper doesn't take prisoners. Then we won't get caught, Emma said, her tone firm. The night of the operation arrived. The team parked their utility van a half-mile from the airstrip, camouflaging it with branches and leaves. Dressed in dark clothing, they moved quietly through the brush, each carrying their assigned gear. Snake's nervous energy was palpable. He kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting Knox to appear out of the shadows. "Stay focused," Harlan whispered. "We get in, get what we need, and get out." The first obstacle was the perimeter fence. Emma knelt by the chain-link barrier, using bolt cutters to create an opening just large enough for the team to slip through. Once inside, they moved swiftly, sticking to the shadows. The roar of engines and the hum of machinery filled the air, masking the sound of their footsteps. Harlan signaled for them to stop as a pair of guards passed by, their rifles slung casually over their shoulders. "Patrols are tight," Lucas murmured. "They're expecting trouble." "They're expecting the wrong kind," Harlan replied. The team reached the hangar where they had seen the trucks disappear during their earlier reconnaissance. Through a crack in the massive doors, they observed workers unloading crates from a convoy of trucks. Each crate was carefully labeled, though the markings were deliberately vague. "Looks like weapons," Lucas whispered. "Or worse," Emma added. Harlan motioned for Snake to stay by the door and keep watch. "We're planting the cameras. If anyone comes this way, warn us." Snake nodded, clutching a small radio. "You've got 10 minutes, tops. After that, we're sitting ducks." Inside the hangar, Harlan and Lucas moved with precision, placing small, high-resolution cameras in key locations. One was tucked behind a beam overlooking the loading area, another beneath the dashboard of a forklift. Emma worked quickly, attaching a GPS tracker to the underside of one of the trucks. "If they move anything, we'll know where it's going," she said. As they worked, Knox Harper's voice echoed through the hangar. "Get these shipments loaded. We're moving them out by sunrise." Harlan froze, signaling for the team to stay quiet. Knox strode into view, flanked by 2 guards. He carried the same metal briefcase they had seen during their earlier surveillance. "What's in the briefcase?" Lucas whispered. "Something important," Harlan replied. They watched as Knox opened the briefcase, revealing a laptop and several folders. He began typing, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. "We need to see what's on that laptop," Harlan said. Emma hesitated. "That's too risky. He's surrounded." "I'll do it," Snake's voice crackled through the radio. Harlan frowned. "Absolutely not. You're staying put." "No, listen," Snake insisted. "I know how these guys think. Knox won't expect me to show up here. If I play my cards right, I can distract him long enough for you to get what you need." "Snake, this isn't—" "Just trust me," Snake interrupted. "You want proof? This is how you get it." Harlan glanced at Lucas and Emma, who exchanged uncertain looks. Finally, he nodded. "Fine, but don't do anything stupid." Snake stepped into the hangar, his hands raised. "Knox, long time no see," he called out. Knox turned, his expression darkening. Well, look who decided to show up." "What are you doing here, Snake?" "Thought I'd pay my respects," Snake said, his tone casual despite the tension in his voice. "Heard you were moving up in the world. Figured I'd tag along." Knox narrowed his eyes. "You've got some nerve showing your face here. After the mess at Red Creek, Eva put a price on your head." "Yeah, about that," Snake said, inching closer. "Maybe we can work something out. I've got information. Valuable information." As Knox focused on Snake, Harlan and Lucas seized the opportunity. They slipped closer to the laptop, careful to stay out of sight. Harlan pulled a small USB device from his pocket and inserted it into the laptop's port. The device silently copied its contents, including documents and encrypted messages. Knox's patience was wearing thin. "You think you can buy your way back into Eva's good graces? You're a dead man walking." Snake smirked. "Maybe, but I'm still breathing, which is more than I can say for most of the vultures." Knox lunged forward, grabbing Snake by the collar. "You've got 10 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't kill you right now." "I just did," Snake said, his grin defiant. Before Knox could respond, a commotion erupted outside the hangar. "Guards, to the perimeter!" someone shouted. The distraction gave Harlan and Lucas the cover they needed. "Go!" Harlan whispered, tugging Lucas toward the exit. Snake took advantage of Knox's momentary distraction, breaking free of his grip. "Looks like your security isn't as tight as you thought," Snake taunted before darting toward the hangar door. The team regrouped outside the airstrip, breathless but victorious. "Did you get it?" Emma asked as they climbed back into the van. Harlan held up the USB drive. "We've got everything we need." "And Snake?" Lucas asked, glancing at the man who was slumped in the back seat. Snake shrugged. "I told you I could handle it." As they drove away, the airstrip receded into the distance, but the battle was far from over. The information on Knox's laptop would be the key to dismantling Eva's operation. But they knew one thing for certain. Eva wouldn't take this blow lying down. "She's going to come for us," Emma said quietly. "Let her," Harlan replied, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "This time, we'll be ready." Back at Whispering Valley Ranch, the air crackled with tension. The team gathered in the Barnturn Command Center, the laptop files copied from Knox's briefcase now displayed across multiple screens. Snake sat apart from the others, nursing a bruised shoulder from his scuffle with Knox. Emma typed furiously, navigating through layers of encrypted documents. "This is sophisticated," she muttered. "Eva's using a cipher system that's military-grade. You can crack it?" Harlan asked. "I can try," Emma replied, "but it's going to take time." Snake shifted uncomfortably. "You don't have time. Knox is going to realize what you took. Eve'll have her people hunting you down by morning." Harlan leaned against the table, his eyes locked on Snake. "Then maybe you should tell us something useful before that happens." Snake hesitated, then sighed. "Eva's been building this network for years. It's bigger than just weapons. Drugs, black market tech, even human trafficking. She's got politicians in her pocket and law enforcement turning a blind eye." "I still don't trust him," Lucas muttered one night as they reviewed their plans. "You don't have to," Harlan replied. "But he's scared. That makes him useful for now." Their first target was the airstrip. Under the cover of darkness, Harlan and Lucas positioned themselves near the salvage yard, their cameras ready. Snake had warned them about the tight security, and he wasn't wrong. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, and floodlights illuminated the yard. After hours of watching, they spotted a convoy of trucks pulling in. The guards opened the gates, and the trucks disappeared into one of the hangars. "Got it," Lucas whispered, snapping photos. As they prepared to leave, they heard the distant rumble of motorcycles. "Trouble?" Lucas asked. Harlan's eyes narrowed. "Let's find out." From their hiding spot, they watched as a group of bikers rode into the yard. At the head of the group was Knox Harper, Eva's right-hand man. He dismounted his bike and began barking orders at the guards. "Looks like Eva's sending reinforcements," Lucas said. "Or cleaning up loose ends," Harlan replied. Knox was carrying a metal briefcase, which he handed to one of the guards before disappearing into the hangar. "What do you think's in there?" Lucas asked. "Something worth finding out," Harlan said. By the time they returned to the ranch, dawn was breaking. Snake was pacing in the barn, visibly agitated. "You saw Knox, didn't you?" he asked as they walked in. Harlan nodded. "Yeah. Why?" Snake swallowed hard. "Because if Knox is there, it means Eve is getting ready to move something big. And if she's tying up loose ends, we're all on borrowed time." Harlan exchanged a look with Lucas. They were closer to the truth than ever, but the stakes were higher than they'd realized. "Then we don't have much time," Harlan said. "We take down the airstrip, and we take it down fast." As the morning sun climbed higher, the team knew the clock was ticking. Eva's network was vast, her resources extensive, but Harlan was determined to see justice prevail. Whispering Valley had already endured too much. It was time to fight back. The plan was simple, but the execution would be anything but. Harlan, Lucas, Emma, and Snake spent the next 2 days gathering everything they needed for the operation. With Sheriff Grayson's help, they secured a discreet supply of surveillance equipment, and Lucas tapped into his old contacts to arrange access to additional resources, including a vehicle disguised as a utility van. The airstrip, nestled behind the facade of a salvage yard, was heavily fortified. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, while strategically placed cameras and floodlights covered every angle. It was clear Eva Cartwright spared no expense protecting her operation. "We've got one shot at this," Harlan said as he spread a detailed blueprint of the airstrip across the ranch's dining table. "We need to get inside, plant surveillance equipment, and gather proof of what's being moved through there. No mistakes." Snake leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. I'm telling you, if they catch us, they won't hesitate to kill us. Knox Harper doesn't take prisoners. Then we won't get caught, Emma said, her tone firm. The night of the operation arrived. The team parked their utility van a half-mile from the airstrip, camouflaging it with branches and leaves. Dressed in dark clothing, they moved quietly through the brush, each carrying their assigned gear. Snake's nervous energy was palpable. He kept glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting Knox to appear out of the shadows. Stay focused, Harlan whispered. We get in, get what we need, and get out. The first obstacle was the perimeter fence. Emma knelt by the chain-link barrier, using bolt cutters to create an opening just large enough for the team to slip through. Once inside, they moved swiftly, sticking to the shadows. The roar of engines and the hum of machinery filled the air, masking the sound of their footsteps. Harlan signaled for them to stop as a pair of guards passed by, their rifles slung casually over their shoulders. Patrols are tight, Lucas murmured. They're expecting trouble. They're expecting the wrong kind, Harlan replied. The team reached the hangar where they had seen the trucks disappear during their earlier reconnaissance. Through a crack in the massive doors, they observed workers unloading crates from a convoy of trucks. Each crate was carefully labeled, though the markings were deliberately vague. Looks like weapons, Lucas whispered. Or worse, Emma added. Harlan motioned for Snake to stay by the door and keep watch. We're planting the cameras. If anyone comes this way, warn us. Snake nodded, clutching a small radio. You've got 10 minutes, tops. After that, we're sitting ducks. Inside the hangar, Harlan and Lucas moved with precision, placing small, high-resolution cameras in key locations. One was tucked behind a beam overlooking the loading area, another beneath the dashboard of a forklift. Emma worked quickly, attaching a GPS tracker to the underside of one of the trucks. If they move anything, we'll know where it's going, she said. As they worked, Knox Harper's voice echoed through the hangar. Get these shipments loaded. We're moving them out by sunrise. Harlan froze, signaling for the team to stay quiet. Knox strode into view, flanked by 2 guards. He carried the same metal briefcase they had seen during their earlier surveillance. What's in the briefcase? Lucas whispered. Something important, Harlan replied. They watched as Knox opened the briefcase, revealing a laptop and several folders. He began typing, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. We need to see what's on that laptop, Harlan said. Emma hesitated. That's too risky. He's surrounded. I'll do it, Snake's voice crackled through the radio. Harlan frowned. Absolutely not. You're staying put. No, listen, Snake insisted. I know how these guys think. Knox won't expect me to show up here. If I play my cards right, I can distract him long enough for you to get what you need. Snake, this isn't. Just trust me, Snake interrupted. You want proof? This is how you get it. Harlan glanced at Lucas and Emma, who exchanged uncertain looks. Finally, he nodded. Fine, but don't do anything stupid. Snake stepped into the hangar, his hands raised. Knox. Long time no see, he called out. Knox turned, his expression darkening. Well, look who decided to show up. What are you doing here, Snake? Thought I'd pay my respects, Snake said, his tone casual despite the tension in his voice. Heard you were moving up in the world. Figured I'd tag along. Knox narrowed his eyes. You've got some nerve showing your face here. After the mess at Red Creek, Eva put a price on your head. Yeah, about that, Snake said, inching closer. Maybe we can work something out. I've got information. Valuable information. As Knox focused on Snake, Harlan and Lucas seized the opportunity. They slipped closer to the laptop, careful to stay out of sight. Harlan pulled a small USB device from his pocket and inserted it into the laptop's port. The device silently copied its contents, including documents and encrypted messages. Knox's patience was wearing thin. You think you can buy your way back into Eva's good graces? You're a dead man walking. Snake smirked. Maybe, but I'm still breathing, which is more than I can say for most of the vultures. Knox lunged forward, grabbing Snake by the collar. You've got 10 seconds to tell me why I shouldn't kill you right now. I just did, Snake said, his grin defiant. Before Knox could respond, a commotion erupted outside the hangar. "Guards, to the perimeter!" someone shouted. The distraction gave Harlan and Lucas the cover they needed. "Go!" Harlan whispered, tugging Lucas toward the exit. Snake took advantage of Knox's momentary distraction, breaking free of his grip. "Looks like your security isn't as tight as you thought," Snake taunted before darting toward the hangar door. The team regrouped outside the airstrip, breathless but victorious. "Did you get it?" Emma asked as they climbed back into the van. Harlan held up the USB drive. "We've got everything we need." "And Snake?" Lucas asked, glancing at the man who was slumped in the back seat. Snake shrugged. "I told you I could handle it." As they drove away, the airstrip receded into the distance, but the battle was far from over. The information on Knox's laptop would be the key to dismantling Eva's operation. But they knew one thing for certain. Eva wouldn't take this blow lying down. "She's going to come for us," Emma said quietly. "Let her," Harlan replied, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "This time, we'll be ready." Back at Whispering Valley Ranch, the air crackled with tension. The team gathered in the Barnturn Command Center, the laptop files copied from Knox's briefcase now displayed across multiple screens. Snake sat apart from the others, nursing a bruised shoulder from his scuffle with Knox. Emma typed furiously, navigating through layers of encrypted documents. "This is sophisticated," she muttered. "Eva's using a cipher system that's military-grade. You can crack it?" Harlan asked. "I can try," Emma replied, "but it's going to take time." Snake shifted uncomfortably. "You don't have time. Knox is going to realize what you took. Eve'll have her people hunting you down by morning." Harlan leaned against the table, his eyes locked on Snake. "Then maybe you should tell us something useful before that happens." Snake hesitated, then sighed. "Eva's been building this network for years. It's bigger than just weapons. Drugs, black market tech, even human trafficking. She's got politicians in her pocket and law enforcement turning a blind eye." Snake hesitated, then sighed. "Eva's been building this network for years. It's bigger than just weapons. Drugs, black market tech, even human trafficking. She's got politicians in her pocket and law enforcement turning a blind eye. If you think this ends at the airstrip, you're dead wrong." Lucas frowned. "So what's the endgame?" Snake shrugged. "Power, money, control. She wants to run the kind of operation no one can touch." Harlan's jaw tightened. "Not on my watch." Hours passed as Emma worked tirelessly, her face illuminated by the glow of the monitors. The rest of the team tried to stay busy, but the mounting pressure was palpable. "Got something?" Emma finally said, her voice tinged with excitement. The others crowded around her as she pointed to a decoded file. "It's a shipping manifest," she explained. "Looks like Eva's moving something big through the state line facility in 2 days. There's a massive convoy scheduled, but it's disguised as agricultural transport." "What's in the convoy?" Lucas asked. Emma clicked through more files. "Weapons, mostly. High-grade stuff. But there's something else listed here, cargo marked as secured assets. No details on what it is." Snake's face paled. "That's her cleanup crew. Whenever Eva wants to erase a problem, she sends secured assets. They're not just muscle, they're assassins." Harlan's gaze darkened. "We need to intercept that convoy." The team devised a plan to hit the convoy before it crossed the state line. Sheriff Grayson agreed to provide backup, but warned that they needed irrefutable evidence to justify a takedown. "We'll document everything," Harlan assured him. "No gray areas this time." Snake, however, was less enthusiastic. "You're walking into a meat grinder. Knox'll have that convoy locked down tighter than Fort Knox." "Then we'll have to be smarter," Emma said. The day before the ambush, the team split up to prepare. Lucas and Snake scouted the state line facility, noting security patterns and potential weak points. Meanwhile, Harlan and Emma worked on disguising their surveillance van as a maintenance vehicle to blend in with local traffic. That night, as they regrouped, Snake voiced his doubts. "You're putting a lot on the line for this." "Why?" Harlan didn't hesitate. "Because someone has to. People like Eva think they're untouchable, that they can crush anyone who gets in their way. We're here to prove them wrong." Snake chuckled bitterly. "You've got guts, old man. I'll give you that. The morning of the ambush arrived, bringing with it a cold, misty dawn. The convoy's route took it through a remote stretch of highway surrounded by dense forest, a perfect spot for an interception. Sheriff Grayson positioned his deputies at key points, ready to block the convoy's escape. Harlan and Lucas parked their disguised van near the choke point, while Emma monitored drone footage from a hidden vantage point. Convoys on the move, Emma reported through the radio. 6 trucks, 2 escort vehicles. ETA? Harlan asked. 10 minutes. Snake shifted nervously in the back of the van. If this goes south, we're all dead. It won't, Harlan said firmly. The convoy appeared on the horizon, a line of unmarked trucks flanked by heavily armed SUVs. As they approached the choke point, Harlan gave the signal. Now. Emma triggered a remote device, causing a small explosion on the road ahead of the convoy. Smoke billowed into the air, forcing the lead truck to slam on its brakes. The escort vehicles immediately fanned out, their occupants leaping out with weapons drawn. This is the sheriff's department. Grayson's voice boomed over a loudspeaker. Stand down and surrender. The convoy guards hesitated, their radios crackling with confusion. Knox's voice came through loud and clear. Hold your ground. Do not engage unless fired upon. Harlan and Lucas moved in from the side, their cameras rolling to capture every detail. Stay in your trucks, Harlan shouted. We've got the area surrounded. For a moment, it seemed like the standoff might de-escalate. But then one of the guards opened fire, and chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed through the forest as Grayson's deputies returned fire. Harlan and Lucas took cover behind a tree, their cameras still recording. Emma, status. Harlan barked into the radio. Truck 2's making a run for it. Emma replied. It's heading for the service road. On it, Lucas said, sprinting toward the fleeing vehicle. Harlan followed, dodging bullets as he chased the truck. Snake, surprisingly, joined them, his earlier fear replaced by a desperate determination. The trio reached the truck just as it veered off the road. Lucas fired a shot into its tire, causing it to skid to a halt. Out of the vehicle, Harlan shouted. The driver complied, hands raised. In the back of the truck, they found crates filled with weapons and a locked container marked secured assets. Emma, we've got the package, Harlan reported. Get the sheriff over here. The battle ended as quickly as it began. The convoy guards were subdued, their weapons confiscated. Knox Harper was nowhere to be found, but the evidence they had gathered was more than enough to make Eva's operation unravel. Grayson approached the locked container, his expression grim. What's in there? Harlan gestured for Snake to step forward. Your turn. Reluctantly, Snake picked the lock. When the container opened, the team froze. Inside were files, photographs, and a list of names, politicians, law enforcement officers, and business leaders. This is it, Harlan said, his voice low. This is how she's been staying untouchable. Snake looked pale. And now she knows you've got it. Harlan turned to Grayson. We need to move fast. This isn't over. As the sun began to set, the team knew they had struck a major blow. But with Eva still at large, the most dangerous part of their fight was yet to come. The convoy takedown made national headlines overnight. The footage Emma captured was broadcast across major news networks, showing the hidden arsenal, the firefight, and the incriminating evidence found in the locked container. For the first time, Eva Cartwright's criminal empire was in the spotlight. But the team had no time to celebrate. She's going to retaliate, Harlan said, pacing the Barnes command center. His voice was grim, his mind already racing with contingency plans. Eva won't let this go unanswered. She'll come straight for us, Snake agreed, leaning against the wall. And she'll bring hell with her. Then we need to hit her first, Lucas said. Take away her ability to strike back. Emma, seated at her workstation, pulled up a new set of files from the container they'd recovered. There's something in here, she said, pointing to a highlighted line in a document. Eva's been funneling money to a property outside of Rapid City. Looks like some kind of communications hub. A command center, Harlan said, leaning over her shoulder. If we can take that out, we can cripple her operation. The property, a sprawling compound surrounded by high fences and surveillance cameras, was located on the edge of a forest. Reconnaissance revealed armed guards patrolling the grounds and a small airstrip nearby. She's using this place to coordinate everything, Emma explained, studying the satellite images. The trucks, the shipments, the bribes, it all runs through here. Harlan nodded. If we take out her ability to communicate, we cut her off from the rest of her network. But how do we get in? Snake asked. That place is locked down tighter than Fort Knox. We use misdirection, Harlan said. While we create a distraction, Emma and I will get inside and plant a device to shut down their systems. Lucas frowned. That's a lot of risk. Risk is all we've got left, Harlan replied. The team spent the next day preparing. Emma worked on building a signal jammer while Lucas and Snake gathered supplies for the diversion. Sheriff Grayson, though stretched thin, agreed to provide backup in case things went south. You're pushing your luck, Harlan, Grayson warned. Eva's losing patience, and desperate people do dangerous things. Harlan nodded. That's why we need to finish this before she has a chance to regroup. On the night of the mission, the team moved into position under the cover of darkness. Snake and Lucas drove an old truck rigged with fireworks and propane tanks, parking it just outside the compound's front gate. This'll get their attention, Lucas said, lighting the fuse. The fireworks erupted in a cacophony of sound and light, drawing the guards away from their posts. Snake hit the gas, sending the truck barreling toward the gate. It crashed into the barrier with a deafening explosion, creating a massive breach. Go, go, go. Harlan whispered into his radio. He and Emma slipped through the forest and climbed over a section of the fence away from the chaos. The distraction worked perfectly. Most of the guards had rushed to the front to deal with the explosion. Inside, they moved quickly, guided by the layout Emma had memorized. The main server room is in the east wing, Emma said, her voice low. We need to be in and out in under 10 minutes. The compound was eerily quiet as they entered the building. Emma led the way, her signal jammer tucked under one arm. Harlan stayed close, his gun drawn. They reached the server room without incident, but the door was locked. Emma pulled out a small device and began working on the keypad. Hurry, Harlan said, his eyes scanning the hallway. I'm going as fast as I can, Emma replied, her fingers flying over the device. After a tense moment, the lock clicked open and they slipped inside. The server room was a maze of blinking lights and humming equipment. Emma located the main hub and began installing the jammer. This'll disrupt their communications for hours, she said. Long enough to cause chaos. Harlan kept watch by the door. We've got company, he whispered. Through the window, he saw a group of guards approaching. We're out of time, Emma said, finishing the installation. Let's move. As they exited the building, alarms blared across the compound. They've spotted us, Emma yelled. Keep moving, Harlan shouted, leading her toward the fence. The guards opened fire, their bullets ripping through the night air. Harlan returned fire, covering Emma as they ran. Snake Lucas were pinned down, Harlan said over the radio. On our way, Lucas replied. Seconds later, the sound of engines roared to life. Lucas and Snake appeared in a stolen truck, crashing through the compound's perimeter. Get in, Lucas yelled. Harlan and Emma dove into the back of the truck as it sped away, bullets ricocheting off the metal. They didn't stop until they were miles from the compound. The team regrouped at a safe house, their breaths heavy with exhaustion. Did it work? Lucas asked. Emma checked her tablet. The jammer's active. Their entire system is offline. That'll buy us time, Harlan said, slumping into a chair. Snake smirked. You've got a real knack for making powerful enemies, old man. Good, Harlan replied. Because now they know we're not going to stop. The next morning, Emma received an encrypted message on her laptop. It was from an unknown sender, but the content was clear. You've crossed the line. Prepare for war. She showed the message to Harlan, who read it silently before looking up. She's scared, he said. Lucas frowned. She doesn't sound scared. She sounds angry. Harlan's expression hardened. Scared and angry. That's when people make mistakes. Let's make sure this is the last one Eva Cartwright ever makes. The team knew the fight was far from over. But with Eva's communications crippled and her network exposed, they were closer than ever to bringing her empire down. And this time, they wouldn't back down until justice was served. The aftermath of the compound raid left the team tense but hopeful. Eva Cartwright's communication hub had been disabled, throwing her organization into chaos. Reports from Sheriff Grayson confirmed a surge in disorganized movements among Eva's operatives. The pressure was working, but the victory was short-lived. At dawn, a grim warning arrived. Harlan stood outside Whispering Valley Ranch as a delivery truck pulled up. The driver, an older man with weary eyes, handed him an envelope and sped off without a word. "What is it?" Lucas asked, stepping out of the barn. Harlan opened the envelope, revealing photographs of Emma, Snake, and Lucas, all taken without their knowledge. The pictures were accompanied by a single message. "You took something from me. Now I'll take everything from you." Emma, seated at her workstation, gasped as she scrolled through live security feeds. "Harlan, you need to see this." He rushed inside to find her pointing to the monitors. The camera at the ranch's south gate showed a convoy of black SUVs idling just out of range. "She's here," Emma said, her voice shaking. "We're sending a message," Snake added grimly. Before anyone could act, the SUVs turned and sped away, kicking up dust as they disappeared into the horizon. "She's testing us," Lucas said, his fists clenched. "No," Harlan corrected. "She's preparing us for what's coming." Sheriff Grayson arrived an hour later, looking as worn as the team felt. "We've got reports of coordinated hits on other ranches in the area. Equipment vandalized, livestock injured. She's trying to isolate us. She wants to spread us thin," Emma said. "Keep us focused on putting out fires while she regroups." Harlan shook his head. "We're not taking the bait. She's trying to keep us on the defensive, but that's not going to work." Despite Harlan's resolve, the day grew darker. By evening, Eva escalated her attack. Explosions rocked a nearby veterinary clinic that had been helping injured animals from the affected ranches. Emma's phone buzzed incessantly with alerts about strange activity across the network. "They're cutting communication lines," Emma said. "We're losing contact with some of the ranches." "Eva's hitting where it hurts," Lucas said. "She's targeting the people who've been helping us." Snake, unusually quiet, finally spoke. "This isn't just a scare tactic. This is her opening move. She's coming for all of us." The team gathered in the barn to plan their response. Harlan stood at the center, his voice steady but urgent. "She thinks she's got us on the run," he said, "but she's overplaying her hand. Every move she makes leaves a trail, and we're going to follow it straight to her." Emma pulled up a map of the region. "I've been tracking the convoy we saw this morning. They made a stop at an abandoned facility east of here. It's an old processing plant." Lucas frowned. "That's way out of the way. Why would she go there?" Snake leaned forward, his expression dark. "Because that's not just any facility. It used to be a staging ground for her operations. If she's back there, she's not hiding, she's fortifying." The team decided to move under the cover of night. Snake, Lucas, and Harlan would approach the facility on foot while Emma stayed behind to monitor surveillance feeds. Sheriff Grayson agreed to station deputies along possible escape routes, ready to intercept if needed. As they approached the facility, the sight of armed guards patrolling the perimeter confirmed their suspicions. The plant wasn't just a fallback point. It was Eva's new base of operations. Snake whispered, "There's no way we're getting in without being seen." "Then we don't go in," Harlan replied. "Not yet." Using a drone outfitted with night vision, Emma provided real-time intel. "I'm seeing heavy security near the main building, but there's a smaller structure on the west side. It looks like it's used for storage." "What's inside?" Lucas asked. "Can't tell from here, but it's worth a look," Emma said. The team decided to investigate the smaller building. Sneaking past the guards, they found the structure unlocked and poorly guarded. Inside, they discovered crates marked with Eva's insignia. Harlan pried one open, revealing rows of weapons and surveillance equipment. Another crate held stacks of counterfeit documents and bundles of cash. "This is her playbook," Snake said. "She's gearing up for something big." Emma's voice came through the radio. "Guys, you've got incoming. 3 guards heading your way." "Move," Harlan ordered. The team slipped out just as the guards entered the building. From their hiding spot, they watched as the guards inspected the crates before radioing someone inside the main facility. They're reporting the inventory, Lucas whispered. We need to get this information out, Harlan said. Returning to the ranch, the team regrouped to analyze their findings. Emma pieced together patterns from the documents, tracing Eva's financial and logistical movements. She's planning something massive, Emma said. A coordinated strike on multiple fronts. Harlan nodded. Then we stop her before she can. The next day, Snake approached Harlan privately. She's not going to stop until she burns this whole region down. And if you think she'll play fair, you're dreaming. I'm not expecting her to play fair, Harlan said. Snake hesitated. There's something else. Eva doesn't just want you out of the way. She wants to humiliate you. You're the only one who's ever really stood up to her, and that's a problem she needs to erase. That's her mistake, Harlan said. She's underestimating us. As night fell, Emma intercepted a message that confirmed their worst fears. She's planning a major assault, Emma said, and it's coming straight for us. Harlan turned to his team, his resolve unshaken. Then we make our stand here. If she wants a fight, we'll give her one. The team knew the final confrontation was inevitable. Eva had pushed them to their limits, but in doing so, she had revealed her own vulnerabilities. With the ranch fortified and allies prepared, the stage was set for the ultimate showdown. For Harlan and his team, the fight wasn't just about survival. It was about justice, and they weren't going to back down. The sun rose over Whispering Valley Ranch, casting long shadows across the fields. Inside the barn, Harlan and his team made their final preparations. The compound was fortified like never before. Every window and door was barricaded, every blind spot accounted for. Allies from neighboring ranches had arrived with supplies and manpower, ready to stand shoulder to shoulder in defense of their way of life. This is it, Harlan said, his voice calm but firm as he addressed the group. Eva Cartwright is coming, and she's bringing everything she has. But what she doesn't understand is that she's not just fighting us. She's fighting everyone who refuses to be bullied by her kind. We don't let her win. Not here. Not today. The gathered group nodded, their faces grim but determined. Emma sat at her workstation, scanning incoming feeds from the network. They're on the move, she announced. A convoy of 15 vehicles headed straight for us. ETA, 45 minutes. Let them come, Harlan said. Snake stood by the main gate, his rifle slung over his shoulder. I've got a bad feeling about this. Eva's not the type to show all her cards up front. She'll try something, Harlan agreed. That's why we're staying sharp. The first sign of the assault came in the form of drones buzzing overhead. Emma identified them immediately. Surveillance, she said. They're scouting for weak points. Lucas grabbed his binoculars. Not just scouting. Those drones are armed. Emma's fingers flew over her keyboard. I can jam their signals, but only for a few minutes at a time. Do it, Harlan said. As the drones lost control and crashed to the ground, Snake smirked. Round one goes to us. But the victory was short-lived. Moments later, the first wave of SUVs roared onto the property. Armed mercenaries poured out, spreading across the field with military precision. They've got numbers, Lucas muttered. We've got heart, Harlan replied. Hold your positions. The initial exchange of gunfire was deafening. Eva's mercenaries moved in coordinated formations, attempting to flank the defenders. But Harlan's team was ready. Using their intimate knowledge of the terrain, they countered every maneuver, forcing the attackers into disadvantageous positions. Snake, perched on a rooftop, picked off mercenaries with unnerving accuracy. Lucas held the main gate, his shotgun booming with each shot. Sheriff Grayson and his deputies provided covering fire from a barricade, while ranchers armed with hunting rifles protected the livestock. This isn't just a ranch, Snake shouted over the chaos. It's a fortress. Eva's voice suddenly crackled through a loudspeaker. Harlan Bennett, she called. You think you've won just because you crippled my operation? You've made yourself a nuisance, but that's all you are. An annoyance that's about to be erased. Harlan grabbed a radio and responded. You think you can just roll over this place like it's nothing? You don't know what you're up against, Eva. Oh, I know exactly what I'm up against, Eva replied, her tone icy. You're just a stubborn old man clinging to something that's already gone. Come and take it then, Harlan said, his voice steady. The second wave was more intense. Armored vehicles approached, their mounted weapons tearing into the ranch's defenses. Emma worked furiously to disable their systems, using hacked signals to overload their electronics. They're adapting, Emma warned. Their attacks are more coordinated now. That means Eva's close, Harlan said. She wouldn't be this focused if she wasn't here to see it herself. As the battle raged, a new threat emerged. Explosions rocked the barn, sending defenders scattering for cover. Lucas shouted, "They're targeting the command center. We can't let them get to Emma." Harlan ordered. Snake and a group of ranchers rushed to reinforce the barn, engaging mercenaries who had breached the perimeter. Despite the chaos, Emma stayed focused, relaying critical updates to the defenders. "They're trying to funnel us toward the west field," she said. "Don't fall for it." The final push came just before sunset. Eva herself emerged from one of the armored vehicles, flanked by heavily armed guards. She strode confidently onto the battlefield, her eyes locked on the barn. "Harlan," she called again, "enough of this. Come out and face me, or I'll burn this place to the ground." Harlan stepped forward, his rifle in hand. "You want me? Here I am." The defenders watched as Harlan walked toward Eva, every step deliberate. Snake whispered to Lucas, "What's he doing?" "Trust him," Lucas replied. Harlan stopped just out of range, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos around him. "You've lost, Eva," he said. "You just don't know it yet." Eva laughed coldly. "You think this is a victory? Look around you, Harlan. Your precious ranch is in ruins, your people are outnumbered, and you're standing here alone." "You think I'm alone?" Harlan said, raising a hand. At his signal, a deafening rumble echoed across the field. Heavy trucks roared into view, reinforcements from neighboring ranches and law enforcement agencies who had joined the fight. Eva's confidence faltered as dozens of vehicles surrounded her position. Deputies, ranchers, and allies emerged, their weapons trained on her mercenaries. "Checkmate," Harlan said. Realizing she was cornered, Eva attempted to retreat, but Snake and Lucas blocked her escape. Sheriff Grayson stepped forward, his badge gleaming in the fading light. "Eva Cartwright," he said, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, and about 100 other charges. Drop your weapon." Eva sneered but complied, tossing her gun to the ground. Her mercenaries followed suit, knowing the fight was over. As the sun set, the ranch fell silent. Harlan and his team surveyed the damage, scorched fields, shattered barricades, but the sense of victory was palpable. "You did it," Emma said quietly. "We did it," Harlan corrected. Snake walked over, his face weary but triumphant. "Think she'll try this again?" "She won't get the chance," Lucas said. Sheriff Grayson nodded. "She'll be locked away for a long time. And this time, there's enough evidence to take down everyone connected to her." The next morning, the community gathered at the ranch to rebuild. Neighboring ranchers brought supplies and tools, working side by side to repair the damage. Emma set up her equipment in the barn, smiling as she watched children play near the rebuilt fences. "We stopped her," she said. Harlan nodded. "And we sent a message. This isn't just a ranch, it's a symbol. No one's going to take that away from us." As the sun rose over Whispering Valley Ranch, Aurora grazed peacefully in the field, her gentle presence a reminder of how it all began. The scars of the battle would heal, and the community would grow stronger, united by the unbreakable bond of standing together against those who sought to harm them. Justice had prevailed, not through revenge, but through resilience, determination, and the quiet strength of good people refusing to back down. The legacy of Whispering Valley Ranch would endure, a testament to the power of community and the triumph of justice over cruelty.